Your worship, are we going to have to sign back in for regular?
No, just stay on this one.
Just stay on this link?
Yeah, just stay on this link. Don't leave it.
Yeah, that's fine. Were you watching that football game for a minute? Oh, no, you're not. You're in the office, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in the office. Yeah.
Oh.
Keeping an eye on the hockey scores.
Oh, I was watching I like the national championship game. Lots of energy with college guys.
Yeah. I was keeping an eye on the Boston game, but they crushed the Capitals.
Oh.
(7-3).
Let's mute this guy.
Larry.
Hello.
Hey, Larry.
How are you doing?
Good.
Good. How was your drive the other day to RDOS?
Oh, it was fine. The roads were in really good shape.
Oh, good.
I was wondering. I was thinking it might be a bit sketchy, but they were. They must have been working all night because the highways were fine.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Once you got into Penticton, it's terrible, but that's okay.
yeah. Yeah, they got no place to put that snow anymore because they got those bike lanes. They can't just shove it off to the side.
I know.
They've been trucking it.
No, we got huge piles in front of my place that they just finally. The last storm before this one, they trucked it away in dump trucks, but this one they just piled up. You can't even see the parking meters.
Hopefully they didn't bury the parking meters.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, no, it's a lot of snow. We got a ton of snow down here. I've never seen as much.
Yeah, it's lots.
Yeah, it's gonna take a while to melt. Hopefully take a while. We don't need any rain or flooding going on here either.
No.
I think we're just waiting for Petra. But we'll start at 7.
Yep.
Time. Okay, I'll call this public hearing at council, Town of Oliver, Monday, January 10th at 7 p.m. to order. This public hearing is convened pursuant to section 464 of the Local Government Act in order to consider zoning amendment bylaw 1380.21. This meeting is open to the public via Zoom, and all representation to council form part of the public record. This meeting is being webcast live and will be archived on the town website. At this public hearing, all persons wishing to speak will be given an opportunity to be heard. However, I ask that persons wishing to speak are asked to virtually raise their hand and they will be unmuted. Before commencing with your remarks, please state your name and address. When addressing council, please restrict your remarks to matters contained in the bylaw. Comments received to date on the proposed bylaw are contained on the town website at oliver.ca/public hearings. Anyone wishing to review those comments is invited to do so. I'll now pass it over to the Director of Development Services to outline the bylaw amendment. Director?
Thank you, Worship. I'll just share my screen here.
Okay.
Are you able to see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just do a brief introduction. The public hearing is for 6005 Station Street and 248 Co-op Avenue. And this is in relation to zoning amendment bylaw 1380.21. The applicant's proposing to operate an electric vehicle manufacturing business within the existing flea market portion of the building. The adjacent lot behind the building will be fenced and used for additional employee parking and vehicle access into the building. The proposed use falls under the definition of manufacturing, which is not listed as a permitted use in the C3 zone. For this reason, a site-specific zoning amendment is required. Property location map, it's the two parcels located at the south end of Station Street. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you, Director. I declare the public hearing open and ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak to the proposed bylaw. If staff could check on the Zoom attendees, that would be great.
No one has their hand raised, Your Worship.
Okay. For the second time, is there anyone who wishes to speak further to the proposed bylaw? I guess I would ask you to put your hand up, or if that's not possible, then just speak. I see one hand.
Hi, Ravina Johal at 5995 Oliver Landing Crescent. We also own a building on Station Street, 6060.
We own a building on Main Street.
Or own a business, I said.
Yes,
But anyway.
okay, sorry.
Sorry, I just had a question actually. What's the capacity of the building going to be, or how many employees will be there? I'm just curious about the traffic, potential traffic increase in the area, because traffic along Station Street has grown quite a bit in the last 6 months, I would say. And that said, I also think this could be a really positive opportunity for jobs in the community, but just wondering about, capacity.
I'll ask the director if he has any of that information.
Thank you, Worship. In the applicant's letter of intent that was submitted with the rezoning application, they indicated that they intend to hire up to 15 staff.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ravina. For the third and final time, is there anyone who wishes to speak further to the proposed bylaw? I'm not seeing any hands. Again, if you're having trouble raising your hand, feel free to just speak. Just because we're on Zoom, I'll just check. Is anyone wanting to speak or having trouble? Hearing none, I declare the public hearing on this bylaw is closed. I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved,
Second.
seconded. Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. We are adjourned. You want me to wait a few minutes, corporate officer, or go right into the regular meeting?
You can go into the regular meeting, your worship.
Okay. I'll call this regular meeting of council, Town of Oliver, January 10th, 2022 at 7:05. Call the meeting to order. Are there any late items to add to the agenda?
No later item, your worship.
Thank you. Look for a motion to, or I have an amendment to the agenda here. Is that still valid, amended by removing item H2 from the water matters?
That's correct.
Okay, then I can look for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Moved and second, thank you. Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to consent agenda. Is there any items on the consent agenda that council would like moved to later in the agenda? Not hearing any. I will look for a motion that the January 10th, 2022 consent agenda be adopted.
So moved.
So
Second.
moved and second, thank you. Any further discussion? Not hearing any, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to committee reports. I'll ask Chairperson Mattis from the Committee of the Whole meeting earlier this evening to give us a report.
Thank you, your worship. We had a presentation by Jim Zaffino of the RDOS on noxious weed control and nuisance control bylaws with a request for more funding that I believe will be dealt with later this evening. We also had a presentation from Kelly Garcia of the Okanagan Basin Water Board on source water protection, which is the protection of our drinking water sources. It was an informative presentation and gave some information for our staff to work with. We had a discussion of council pay and remuneration with the result that staff will advertise to form a public committee to review council remuneration and expenses. Council also directed staff to apply for federal government funding on possible upcoming infrastructure projects, specifically the extension of sewer service further down Sawmill Road. Council approved a request from staff to support a grant application from UBCM to upgrade our emergency preparedness facilities in the Legion Hall. And the final item was the appointment of election officers for the upcoming municipal election in the fall. And we have Rochelle Lougheed as the chief election officer and Diane Vakovich as her deputy. Congratulations to both of them. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Chairperson Mattis. Moving to water matters, our item on the agenda is the water quality summary report for December 2021. I'll ask our Director of Operations if there's any highlights you'd like to note from the report.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was a quieter month. I think the cold kind of hampered that and some vacations. The operators, the only significant thing the operators had to deal with was repairing a 4-inch domestic water line on Pine Hill Road. Other than that, it was minor maintenance and checks, and during snow removal we actually get the operators helping out, some of them back up other guys on vehicles and hand shoveling, so they are busy doing other things too. December was the last half of December was a cold month. I believe we dealt with some frozen lines too on people's property. They weren't from our lines, and the average groundwater consumption for December was just below average. And that's about it for December, really.
Thanks, Director. Councillor Michelle, I see you have your hand up. I think you're
I was just
on.
gonna move,
Yep.
I was just gonna move receipt of the report, Your Worship. I'll move it.
Move receipt of report. Can I get a seconder?
I can second.
Thank you, Councillor Sadoo. Any further discussion or questions? Not hearing any, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Anything to report this evening, Water Councillor Sadoo?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just this evening's meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle, anything to report this evening?
No, Your Worship.
Okay. Moving to bylaws, our first item is a sewer user rate amendment bylaw 1331.09. This is for second and third reading. I'll pass this over to our CFO.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to obtain council approval on the bylaw amendment that incorporates council direction made during the November 8th and November 22nd special open meeting, and reflects the sewer rate increases that were approved at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the Chief Financial Officer? Get my participants up here. Not seeing any. Can I get a motion that council read sewer user rate amendment bylaw 1331.09 for a second and third time? Councillor Schwarzenberger.
I'll make that motion, but perhaps for anyone listening, the CFO could remind us what the increase is in this coming tax year.
I'll second for discussion.
It's thank you, Councillor. It's a 4% increase for 2022 and a 5% increase for 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion or questions? Not seeing any. I will call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 2, Fire Control Amendment Bylaw 1369.02. This is for adoption. If there's no questions, can I get a mover that council adopt the Fire Control Amendment Bylaw 1369.02?
So moved.
Moved. Second.
Second.
And second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any, I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 3, Zoning Amendment Bylaw 1380.17, 5753 Main Street. I will pass this over to our Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. This application is seeking to add a definition to the zoning bylaw for Strata RV Resort, while also amending the zoning designation of the subject property from CT1 Tourist Commercial 1 to CT1S Tourist Commercial 1 Site Specific to facilitate a Bearland Strata subdivision. The proposed zoning amendment was discussed by council at the June 28th council meeting. There were some questions that council had, and I will answer most of those questions right now. In regards to utilities, currently there are 2 water meters on the property, one for domestic, one for irrigation. As rates are determined by consumption, no changes are anticipated. Currently, there's 1 sewer connection with 72 campsite charges of $36.60 each annually. And just to note that this is much less than the $284.60 annually for residential. In terms of taxes, the property is classified already as Class 1 residential. The calculations are included in the report. I won't go over them, but basically the municipal taxes would increase by $3,700 for the entire property. So assuming that the property is stratified into 40 lots and the assessed value is $100,000, That equates to approximately $94 annually in an increase per strata lot. And just to note that RVs would not qualify for an increase in the improvement value of properties. In terms of average length of stay, I believe the applicant's agent will touch on that in his presentation next. In regards to the municipal and regional district tax, I've been advised that the implementation of MRDT is for hotel and motel units and vacation rentals and does not apply to RV resorts and campgrounds. And then in regards to bylaw amendments, the applicant has indicated that they wish to proceed with the bylaw as proposed. Staff have several concerns with the bylaw, which have been identified in the June 28th report and were attached to this report. Just to speak, provide some analysis, Section 478 of the Local Government Act states that all bylaws enacted or works undertaken by a council, board, or greater board, or by trustees of an improvement district after the adoption of an official community plan must be consistent with the relevant plan. The proposed zoning amendment to facilitate a bare land strata subdivision in which individual lots will be utilized for non-commercial uses is not consistent with the commercial tourist designation of the OCP. This designation falls under the commercial designation of the official community plan. Some of the objectives are to support a vibrant economy by encouraging a wide range of commercial uses for both visitors and residences, establish and maintain accessible pedestrian-friendly streetscapes along the town of Oliver's commercial corridors, support accessible pedestrian-friendly commercial development. A zoning amendment that is residential in nature rather than commercial is not considered to be aligned with these objectives. For this reason, and as per 478, Section 478 of the Local Government Act, staff recommend that the bylaw be denied first and second reading. Council may consider that the proposed use is in line with the OCP, and if that's the case, they may choose not to support the staff recommendation and give the bylaw first and second reading and proceed to a public hearing. So with that, the staff recommendation is that zoning amendment bylaw 1380-17 be denied first and second reading. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Director.
And the applicant's agent is available now. Mr. Mayor, if you wish to have him speak or after council has questions for staff, it's up to you.
I would get the representative to speak now. I think it'd be a good time for questions. Gives the council an opportunity to ask questions as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, council, for getting this on the agenda. Thanks, Randy, for moving this application forward. If I may, Your Worship, I'd like to share my screen.
Yeah.
And
are you able to do that, or do you need our corporate officer to help out?
I'm just reading here. Let me see. There we go. Okay. Do I have something on your guys' screen?
No, not yet. It looks like it's starting now. Yep. It's there now.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm just going to give a little bit of a refresher for council about exactly what we're planning on doing here. So I've given a bit of a concept there that we showed the council back last June. We're looking to subdivide the property to create separate legal lots for tourist holiday RV use, convert the ownership of the existing Desert Gem RV resort from a single owner to a strata ownership model. The strata RV resort would utilize the existing municipal service connections and only minimal site layout changes are anticipated. In terms of the zoning, as Randy indicated, the existing zoning is CT, and the existing OCP, pardon me, the existing OCP is commercial tourist, and we're not planning on changing that. And the zoning of the property is CT1, and we're looking for a CT1S zone. On the right-hand side of the screen, I've just outlined a few of the items that are part of the site specific. So that's adding a new strata RV resort as a permitted use, creating a minimum parcel size of 150 meters and a minimum parcel width of 7 meters. Implementing a setback of 0.6 meters to the RVs, accessory building height of 4.5 meters and area of 4.5 square meters. And we're looking at some occupancy limitation or limit restrictions and rental pool requirements, and a maximum number of lots to 48. Presently, I believe there's a little over 60. We're looking at reducing that and making them a little bit larger and a little bit better. In terms of tourist accommodation in Oliver, the owners do not wish to close the RV resort, but rather have found an innovative way to allow the resort to remain in place. Strata lots will be attractive to tourists looking to prepay for vacation accommodation by owning their vacation accommodation spot. Occupants of the RV resort will be tourists from out of town wanting to vacation and spend money in Oliver and the surrounding area. As Randy mentioned, council was looking for average length of stay, and we've taken this right off of their reservation records. The average length of stay in 2021 was 19.12 days. There was 685 reservations, and 19 days was the average length of stay for last year. In terms of increased tax revenue, we found a number of concerns or problems with the way that the taxation was calculated. So I'm gonna show a different way, and I think you'll see that this is the correct way. Staff used a complicated approach to try to show a minimal increase in the tax benefit to the community, used an incorrect assumption about the strata lot values, and did not account for all of the tax revenue that will benefit the community. Staff did not account for the taxes that would be collected for the following community services: RCMP, fire, library, the Frank Venables Auditorium, Parks and Recreation, and 911. Taxes paid for these community services need to be included in the tax benefit calculation, so council has an accurate understanding of the increased tax benefit to the municipality. It's just simply not correct to take the one municipal line out and say that's the benefit to the community. All of the tax revenue from these areas benefits the community, and they need to be included if you want to take an honest look at the tax benefit. So I've just taking a quick look here, 40 strata lots, assessed value of 140,000. These are numbers that are consistent with the other strata RV lots in the area. The previous calculation did not account for any of the building improvements. So the common area and the building assessment for this project would be probably in the order of 750,000. So the estimated 2022 assessment would be about $6,350,000. That is, I think, a pretty reasonable estimate of the assessment for this project if it was stratified. So if we look at the taxation, there's the municipal rates for municipal, which is only the one that staff had used. But if you include RCMP, fire, library, Frank Venables, Parks and Rec, and 911, you assess those tax rates to the assessment that I've shown, and the increase in taxes are going to be about $12,000 above what they are right now. The taxation for these numbers here is about $18,000. Taxes paid last year for the similar is about $5,800. So the reality is that this project is going to benefit the community in the order of a little over $12,000 annually. And that doesn't include some other taxes that'll be paid. Other taxes that'll be collected include the school tax, hospital tax, RDOS, general tax, and SAR. The increase in these taxes over 2021 will be approximately $11,500. That's $11,500 more than what are paid in 2021. Estimated total taxes from the proposed development would be approximately $35,000. This is more than triple the 2021 taxes collected of $11,506. Now, before I move away, I can't be any more clear that the numbers that were used were simply not an accurate reflection of the tax benefit of the tax revenue that this project will bring to the community. So in summary, the proposed tourist commercial use implements the OCP policy of the commercial tourism designation by providing an innovative tourist accommodation. The proposed RV strata lots will be used for commercial use, as the RV lots within the RV resort will be used for tourist accommodation use. It's simply not logical to classify a non-residential tourist accommodation use as residential, as it is not residential in any way. Examples of strata tourist accommodation that are zoned commercial can be found throughout the province and are prevalent in Kelowna and Whistler. Occupants of the strata RV resort will be tourists, whether they own the site or are renting the site, and regardless of whether the occupants are owners of the site or renting the site, they will spend money in the community. The proposed use is not a change in land use. It is simply a change in the tenure or ownership of the existing use. The RV park will remain the same in terms of its use. The nature and character of the proposed use is entirely based on providing accommodation to tourists, people visiting Oliver. The RV lots will provide vacation properties for purchasers to vacation year-round. It will not be used for residential use. Average length of the stay in the resort in 2021 was 19.12 days from over 685 reservations. This is not expected to change, as many existing patrons will purchase lots and rent them when they are not using them. The suggested occupancy limits, rental pool program, and strata rules will ensure that the proposed use provides temporary accommodation in the high season and allows monthly rentals in the winter to attract snowbird demographic to provide year-round tourism in Oliver. Annual taxes from the property will triple, and the community will realize an increase in tax revenue by over $12,000 annually. And the real benefit is that the town of Oliver does not need to do anything to realize this taxation windfall. And that's all I've had to present at this point. I do have the owner of the property listening in, and one of his colleagues. And Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'm just going to throw it out there to those two individuals. If there's something that I have missed, something that you think I need to get corrected, Mr. Mayor, if they could be allowed to chime in, that would be very helpful in case I've missed something.
Yeah, I'll give you an opportunity for a few minutes if anybody would like to add to your comments.
I see that Mr. Nelson has raised his hand.
Okay.
I'm not sure if
He's been unmuted.
Scott, I think you just need to unmute.
Yeah, I think, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to express what I think are the benefits of what we're proposing here to the community. It's not just the tax revenue, but it's also what we believe will encourage people, especially people that are coming to visit Area 27, to stay and spend money in Oliver versus going to a Soyuz or Penticton. These are people that fly in on private planes, and they want a home base, and if they can't find something that suits their needs, they'll go somewhere else. And I think that that is the benefit to the community, more so even than the tax revenue. It's a good thing for the other businesses in the community to have these type of guests stay in the community versus going to Penticton or Soyuz. The next thing I would like to say is that I'm just trying to figure out a way to say this nicely, but we believe that the council has been misled by the planning department.
Scott, I'm not going to accept those kind of comments at this meeting. Keep your comments away from being personal and stick to the facts, please.
Well, I don't think they're personal feelings, they're the facts, but we'll deal with that at the appropriate time in the appropriate way. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ben, is that the other representative or the other owner?
Yeah, that's me. I'm not owner or just a colleague of Scott's. I think Brad's done a really good job in summarizing the key points, and I think Scott has as well in terms of overall economic benefit. And in listening to all that, I think it can be a convoluted explanation or consideration, but it really boils down to, in my view, three points that Brad's well made. There's no change in use, only ownership structure. So, as if the town is pleased to have an RV resort operating, which has been expressed to us in the past, and if anything concerned that might change in some way, we want to be abundantly clear that will persist. We're not looking to change use, we're just looking to change ownership structure. The second is tax revenue from the same site and the same effective use is going to increase approximately 3 times. And I would hit Brad's point again, through no effort of the town, just by change of ownership structure and assessment. And then last, staff's pointed out and a requirement to be consistent with the OCP. And it's our view that this in fact is. There's substantial economic benefit, not just from the project itself, but the knock-on benefit that Scott's well articulated. We anticipate the buyers to be high net worth individuals that are going to bring their presence and their spending in a repeatable, reliable fashion from their perspective, and to an investable property, also a priority to these sorts of buyers, and then make that property available to the traveling tourists that we serve now when they're not able to use it themselves by virtue of the occupancy restrictions. So I think this is achieving a sort of a triple win, in that it's a more viable structure for us in the business. It's economic benefit by taxes and knock-on spending to the community and the town, and is a win for the users and the owners who are going to come back again and again. So I think if we think of it on those 3 points, it's a viable and reasonable and legislatively consistent, as staff has raised, proposal. So we appreciate your consideration.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, I'll check with council now. If anybody from council has a question from any of the participants that have spoken so far, this is your time for that question. Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't really have a question. I just would like to start off with a couple of comments and maybe get the ball rolling with my colleagues. Appreciate the presentation from Mr. Alenko. I'm a little bit I don't feel that their statement that the 19.12 days average stay would continue, because I look at some of the RV resorts just next door to us in Osoyoos, where people have put park models on there. They live there. They're almost living there year round, if not totally all the time. And I'm really hesitant. I understand there's going to be there would be a tax increase, but the one main thing that causes me some concern is the fact from turning this from one owner into 40 or 48 owners, that will probably make sure that this property is never developed into anything else. So a possibility down the road for a hotel or something like that, which is tourist commercial, would never fly, because there's 48 owners instead of one owner. We don't have a lot of tourist commercial space in town right now. And I think to take this one, even though it would have the same zoning, but it would be a site-specific situation, I think that gives me a lot of concern. And those are my thoughts for now. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. What I'm looking for right now is questions to the proponents. And if we're not going to get any questions, then we'll move into our discussion, which Councillor Schwarzenberger has started. So I'm going to ask one more time, is there any questions for the opponents of the project that have spoken so far? I'm not seeing any, so I'd say thanks to Scott and Ben and your representative that spoke for you and provided the PowerPoint presentation. We will, as a council, have a discussion and debate about the bylaw amendment and the zoning amendment bylaw and make a decision. So thank you again. So I'll open it up to council. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before I get into whatever I might have to say, we'll follow the proper protocol, I guess. I'll make the motion that council deny first and second reading of this bylaw. And that way we can move into discussion.
That's good. Can I get a seconder?
I'll second the motion for discussion.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Now I'll continue my discussion or my points on this. The reason I don't favor it is I don't think it's healthy for the town as a whole, and I have to think of the whole town and not just this property. We need campground space. I'm not prepared to tie it up to each space up to an individual owner, so to speak, and then depend on them when council has no control over the strata agreement or terms or whatever other conditions there might be. That would be the strata itself and how it registers. To the point that it would raise more taxes with the stroke of a pen, I totally agree. It doesn't matter what the math is, more taxes will be raised. But we have to keep in mind the taxes are raised based on property values. So with that same stroke of the pen, what we are doing with this is we are increasing the value of the property to the owner 2 or 3-fold. And I don't think that's the role of council, is strictly to change zoning for the purposes of increasing value. There's no change to the use of the property. They've been adamant about that. And so if there's no change to the use of the property, I see no need to change the zoning of the property. So that's why I have spoken in favor of denying first and second reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Grace.
Thank you. We're fumbling around to find my hand there. Yeah, I agree with the points that Councillor Mattis made, as well as the points that Councillor Schwarzenberger made earlier. I think, even using their numbers, the economic benefit to the town is pretty minimal. I don't see how stratifying this campground would encourage more tourists, and the high net worth buyers that they're anticipating, I can't see bothering to participate in a rental pool, even if they can only stay 6 months or whatever, then, if they want this for their summer home, why? I can't see them even bothering. And for us to have to rely on 40 or 48 owners to turn over these sites, month after month, as opposed to one motivated owner of the entire campground, I think is actually going to lessen the amount of use of the property. So I'm not in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just throw my 2 cents in as well, so everybody knows where I stand, but I think that I'm just going to be repeating a bit of what's been said. There's a couple of things that concern me with this proposal, but really the big one, Councillor Schwarzenberger brought it up right off the bat, changing the property from one owner to 48 ensures that this will stay an RV resort for really kind of as far as the eye can see. And that causes me to think, is an RV resort really the highest and best use long-term for this commercial space? Because we're not just talking now, we're not just talking 5 years from now, we're talking decades down the road. And so I'm not sure that it is. And that's what also causes me to speak in favor of the motion that's been put on the board.
Thank you, Councillor Ventimiglia. I'll just add my comments there. I think I'm going to echo a lot of the council with my comments. While there will be a bit of a tax increase for me, it's not about taxes, it's what's best for the town, and keeping options open for future use, which multiple owners will not do to this site. I think the OCP had a vision in mind, and I do not believe that this change in use would meet that spirit of the OCP that was adopted a long time ago. So I will not be voting, I will be voting to deny first and second reading as the motion says. Any further discussion, council? Not seeing any hands or comments. I will call the question and ask the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 4, zoning amendment bylaw 1380.19, development permit with variances, 6643 Lakeside Drive for adoption. I'll pass this over to the Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. This item is for adoption, and it's also for a resolution of approval of the development permit with variances, in which staff will issue right away tomorrow. Thank you.
Can I get a mover that council adopt zoning amendment bylaw 1380.19?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion or questions? Not seeing any hands. I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Where are we at here? Item 5. Oh, we got another motion here that council approved development permit with variances 2021-18. This is for the same property, correct, Director?
Thank you, Your Worship. No further to add. This was the variance for the front and rear and north interior setback, as well as the loading space, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? Call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 5, zoning amendment bylaw 1380.2, development permit with the variances, 491 Salamander Avenue. Pass this over to our Director of Operations.
Development Services, unless the Director of Operations wants to touch on it.
It's all yours.
Okay, thanks. I'll share my screen here. You can see it. Everyone can see it?
Yep.
All right, this application is for zoning amendment bylaw 1380-20, as well as development permit with variances 2021-30. The applicant's proposing to construct a 7-unit townhouse development on the subject property, consisting of 2 separate 3-unit building and one's a 4-unit building. Each unit features a carport and living space on the main level, with 2 bedrooms and a den on the 2nd floor. Given that the maximum number of units allowed and maximum floor area ratio exceeds the maximum allowed under the RM1 zone, a rezoning to RH1, which is residential high density 1, is required. The subject property is also located within a development permit area and requires approval for the form and character and landscaping. There is also a development variance permit for the exterior side parcel line setback and amenity space requirements. It's a very similar process as the previous one on Lakeside. Property location map, 491 Salamander Avenue on the corner of Park and Salamander. The ortho shows it here. This existing dwelling is still in place. It was from the 1940s, I believe, and this would be demolished. The OCP for the property is high density residential, and the zoning is RM1. Photos of the subject property on the left is the Park Drive elevation. Same thing on the right. The left here shows the Salamander Ave elevation, and on the right shows the south portion of the subject property, which is adjacent to a single family house. This is a site plan. I've outlined the property line in black for clarity, and then in brown each unit. So the idea is you enter from Salamander Avenue with an exit only onto Park Drive, and this is a one-way from Salamander to Park, so that there's no one turning in off of a busier street. They utilize the intersection, and then they come in off of Salamander. And then I've circled in red on the right, that's the exterior side parcel setback request. In terms of the zoning amendment, the proposal is consistent with growth management objectives of the OCP that support efficient use of land within the town, including the infilling of vacant lots and supporting medium and higher density development in residential areas designated for such development. The residential policies of the OCP speak to prioritizing residential growth and infill within the town's boundaries over the extension of boundaries. The proposal will add 7 family-oriented units in close proximity to schools and other services, which also encourages more walking and active forms of transportation. Any additional parking spaces could be accommodated on the east side of Park Drive across from the subject property. Just to touch on the housing needs report, it was completed in 2020, and it indicates that in order to meet basic housing demand by 2025, 75 2-bedroom units are required, which is broken down into 26 owner and 49 rental. The proposed construction will make a contribution towards this requirement. And we are expecting to see quite a few multifamily projects sort of kick off, hopefully this spring, and perhaps it would be good to give an update to council on how we're doing in meeting this objective. In regards to the development permit, it meets the intent as highlighted below. The front facade features multiple material types such as horizontal hardy and board and batten with a mix of gray and white. Each unit facing Salamander has 2 individual roof peaks rather than a uniform box look, which I'll touch on in the next photo, which this adds visual interest to the building. And then the end unit, which faces Park Drive, which is the busier street. Ideally, the unit would actually face towards Park Drive and have a door on Park Drive, but from a design perspective, that's often difficult. So at least having some windows and a bit of a fronting appearance is better than just a side of a building look. And the Park Drive frontage, although there is quite a bit of landscaping on the site now, which is, it would be sad to see it go, they will add quite a few trees along the front, which will help to improve the aesthetic value or maintain the aesthetic value of the property. The Salamander frontage will have a 4-foot high fence and individual pedestrian entries into the unit. So it'll really have that street appearance. You walk down the street, open your gate, go into your unit, and then each unit will also have a small private outdoor amenity space. Garbage and recycling would be at the southwest corner of the development. Here are the building elevations, as I talked about. It's not just a square building with doors, 4 doors along the bottom. There is sort of this individual peak appearance where it's like a double peak, and that really makes it seem like they're individual units, which is great. And then as I talked about on the elevation facing Park Drive, you'll see there is windows, and there will be landscaping as well as screening from the vehicle there. There'll be a vehicle parked there, so there is screening there, and then yeah, the boxwoods there. And this is the landscape plan. So as I mentioned, it is a smaller site with quite a few units, but they did maintain the landscaping in the key areas, which is, you know, along the front, along Park Drive, and then this area between the units. In terms of the development variance permit, regards to the exterior parcel line setback reduction, the 6-meter minimum exterior side parcel line setback is really intended in the RH1 zone due to the negative visual impact that a 6-story building could have. So a 6-story building, you know, if someone's building to the max, that should be constructed at 6 meters. Whereas this is a third of that size. So going to 3.3 meters is still 10 feet from the sidewalk. So that's passable in my opinion. The reduction of the exterior parcel line setback also allows for that drive aisle behind. So sort of pulling the buildings to the north allows for the drive aisle at the back. And then in regards to the amenity space, it's a reduction in 6 meters squared, which is quite minimal. I mean, it's a small site. There's not, you know, there's no decks or anything like that, but it is close to parks, and, you know, it is providing more units in a great area. Here's the floor plan. So 1 parking space for each unit, which does meet the zoning bylaw. So there is the living space on the main level, and then the second level has the master bedroom and then a small den. The den does not have a window except Looks like, I guess the N unit would have a window, but there's no closet, so I don't think you would classify as a bedroom. With that, the options for council is they may choose to support the staff recommendation, may choose not to, or may choose to refer it back to staff. The staff recommendation is the zoning amendment bylaw 1380-20 be read a first and second time and proceed to the public hearing, and that the public hearing be scheduled for January 24th, and that staff give notice. And in regards to the development permit with variances, the delegations and submissions be heard at the public hearing, and that council consider the development permit with variances following the adoption of the zoning amendment bylaw 1380-20. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Questions for the Director? Comments? Councillor Mattis?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a question. If we didn't pass this and left it at the current zoning, they would be able to put in 6 units as opposed to 7 units. Is that correct?
Sorry, Councillor Mattis. I touched on that in the report, correct? Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I just want to confirm that that the current zoning allows for 6 units. They're asking for a zoning change to put in 7 units, correct?
Yeah. So the maximum is 50 dwelling units per hectare under the RM1, which equates to 6 units.
Okay, so if they stayed at 6 units, then they would also have the space where they would need no change in the setback, and they would need no change in the amenity because there would be sufficient room on the property. So if I understand this correctly, what we're giving up setbacks and we're giving up amenity space in exchange for 1 more unit.
Is that a comment for me to answer?
I'm asking, is that correct?
Okay, that's correct. The only thing I'd point out is that there's more floor area with the RH1 zone, so you are allowing a bigger, more livable space by rezoning, and also to point out that the zoning is aligned with the OCP, so that area does call for higher density.
Yeah, I think it fits well into the neighborhood, whether it's six units or 7 units. When I look at all the units around there, it absolutely fits. So that wasn't the question. It's just that my question was more around if we do this, we're gaining 1 unit in exchange for setbacks and amenity space.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Worship. I think this is a project that fits well with the surrounding area and would be a great addition to the town. My one question is regarding visitor parking. I noticed there's not any requirement for visitor parking like we had on the project that we just approved. And is that because of the different zoning, or why is there no requirement for visitor parking?
Through the chair to Councillor Schwarzenberger, there is a requirement for visitor parking at 0.2 per unit, and the bylaw was amended earlier last year to round to the nearest whole number. So what that means is 7 times 0.2 is 1.4. And so it gets rounded down to 1 parking space, only 1 visitor parking space required for the development. And that's provided.
Okay, thank you.
I'll jump in here. I was thinking about this the way that Councillor Mattis was thinking about this, mostly because my concern is around parking. Do a lot of walking in that area. That Salamander Avenue is very narrow. If you have somebody parked on the street, it's a one-way street. And then to suggest that people can go across to the east side of Park Avenue, we're creating a parking lot along Park Avenue, and there's already a multifamily residential development right across the street from this one. At the end of the day, I should say, I'm 6 units, 7 units, it doesn't make any difference to me. I just think, and I'm supportive of this, but my biggest concern is that we're solving one problem, but we're creating another problem with parking. Because it's hard to believe you're going to get 7 units with 1 vehicle each, and only 1 visitor is going to come along there. And it's already, especially Salamander Avenue, is already a challenge when it comes to driving down that road, because there is multiple people parking on that street already. I am in favor of this, but I think at some point we're going to have to start thinking of the highest and best need. We talk about that, but let's not create too many problems getting there. And those would be my comments. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, those were some really good points about the parking. I guess I'm just going back to the amenity space, and it's not a deal breaker for me or anything, but I found it really interesting. I don't know if the director wants to comment, but they don't have maximum lot coverage or maximum number of units. So it just makes me question why they're unable to achieve the minimum amenity space. Like if they could have had more units and more lot coverage.
Yeah, through the chair, to Councillor Grice, I think the biggest thing that would have been an impediment is the drive aisle. So when the development was first proposed, they wanted to have like 5 driveways off of Salamander, and that's a new curb. That's a brand new sidewalk. The less interaction with pedestrians, the better. So really the best outcome to put this drive aisle in is this is really the only way to make it work, and that totally diminishes amenity space. So I really think the design having to accommodate that drive aisle is why you're seeing the reductions.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Sorry, just to add, that's why you're seeing the reduction in the step back and the reduction in amenity space. That's the reason really for both variances.
Councillor Ventimiglia.
Thank you, Worship. I will pick up right along that train of thought. And I wasn't going to, this was going to be my final thought, but I'll just start with it. I wasn't going to bring up amenity space so much specifically in regards to this proposal, but just as something for us to all think about bigger picture. We seem to be developing a pattern of robbing from exterior amenity space to accommodate larger buildings, more units, et cetera, et cetera. We've done it a few times recently. And hearing that we have more developments coming up, I think that that's, for me personally, that's just something that we really need to think about. The use or the reason that we're being given and the reason that we're accepting is that these units are close to parks and they're close to schools and they're close to trails, which is fine. Everything in town is close to parks and close to schools and close to trails. You know, but if you're a parent at home with your toddler or your 5-year-old or your 8-year-old or whatever, and you just want to open up the patio door and let them play, that's quite a different outdoor experience than packing everybody up and heading to the nearest park or the nearest playground. And so if our goal is to create family-friendly units, which is what we're really concentrating on and have been concentrating on, I think that that's something just for us as a group to keep in mind, that we're not doing ourselves and we're not doing these families any favors by robbing even 25 square feet or 30 square feet from the exterior space. And so that was going to be my closing point, but we'll start there. I also had concerns about parking, which has been brought up a couple of times now. I think it's, I was going to ask if there was space for parking along Salamander, which it's been made clear that there's not. And so I think that it's interesting that we're suggesting that overflow parking across the street in front of another multifamily development. I think that the mayor hit the nail on the head. We're solving one problem and we're creating another issue longer term. There, I suppose, isn't really anything that we can, or I don't know, maybe I should ask, is there anything that we can do about that right now? It's not that we can't change the rules halfway through the process. And I know that we just looked at our parking requirements not long ago, but maybe that's something that we need to look at again, because 7 or 1 stall per 2-bedroom unit with 1 visitor parking stall. I mean, that it's just not realistic to think that they're not going to need more parking than that for that complex. So I guess before I move on, instead of just assuming, I will ask, is there anything that we can do about parking requirements at this point, or really our bylaw is our bylaw and that's just the way it is?
Through the chair, you would have to amend the zoning bylaw, do a housekeeping amendment to add more parking again.
Right.
Or
And that's not
deny-
fair.
Or deny this zoning amendment. I mean, you can deny it for whatever reason you wish, right? So if
Yeah.
that's the biggest concern to you, then we can address
Yeah.
later.
I think it's not, I'm not suggesting that we do that. I don't think it's fair to do that to somebody halfway through the process when they were given the rules and then we changed the rules halfway in. But I think that is also something to consider going forward. And then finally, I appreciate staff's comments regarding the side view of the building, having a few windows to add a bit of interest, but it looks like the side of a building. And we're putting this big side of a building, 2-story building right on Park Drive, which is a main corridor. I think ideally, yes, obviously the unit would be front facing there on Park Drive, but if that is not possible, and if it's not possible to have an entrance there, I think a lot of work needs to be done to the side of the building because that's going to be basically a really nice tall vertical wall, just right along your drive down Park Drive, which again is a main corridor. And I don't think that that's appropriate for the space. And so I believe that because that's design related, that actually isn't something that we would need to determine right now. That comes back at the next phase.
Up through the chair to Councillor Ventimiglia, it's definitely worth, if that's something that council all feel strongly about, that's something I can easily request to the applicant, and then that gets amended now through the process. So they could amend it before the public hearing and try to, I did mention that comment to them to try to put a door, and it couldn't be done because of some design considerations, but anything could be done if you try hard enough, I guess.
Yeah, anything can be done if you try hard enough. Okay, so what I think I just understood is that if that view is not acceptable to us, it does need to be dealt with now before public hearing. It's not a separate development permit issue later on or something like that.
Well, sorry, I should add, I mean, technically, no, it doesn't have to be dealt with until after the zoning bylaw is adopted. But why would you go through the whole process and then adopt the bylaw and then at that meeting go, well, we don't like the side of the building, and then you add another month onto their process, right? So it's good to provide them with that feedback as early as possible.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of my comments for now.
Thank you. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to go along with some of those points, when we talk about rule changes and changing the bylaw, in actual fact, we have good zoning for this site at 6 units, which would provide more parking space on that site. It is the builder that is asking for the rule changes. In this particular case, this is our opportunity to say, no, the rules we have will work best for this property. It will provide more amenity space. It will provide the proper setbacks. It will provide better parking without taking up space on those. So this is our one opportunity to say, no, work with the rules that we've given you. Do the 6 units instead of the 7 units. Move further back from the street so that 8-year-old has more than 10 feet to play in before they run into the street. Because that's what they're faced with there, and as close as they are to parks and everything else. And I recognize that some of us on council are totally in favor of more housing and all of that, and I support it as well. But we have to use caution when we do that. We can't do it at the expense of everything else. I think 6 units on this site is more than enough as opposed to 7. The loss of one particular one won't kill the town. And by the sounds of it, there's a whole bunch more coming on the line that will make up for the loss of that particular one. When you look at this type of unit with a drive-in alley or whatever, I have family that lives in Arbor Lane or Arbor over by the Tuckalnewit Elementary School. They have 1 parking stall per unit, and they also have a garage. It's next to impossible to find parking in that place. If you go to visit, the visitor stalls are all full. It's like Councillor Vandermeer is correct. We should be looking at our parking because 1-car families just don't exist nowadays. We need to look at that. So I won't be voting in favor of this because I think that the current zoning works beautifully for the property, and that the builder, by taking out 1 unit, will provide and follow the rules and do the things that are best for the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Grace?
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions, just sort of along the lines of the comments of my last two colleagues. One, just on the topic of the concerns with the side of the building facing Park Drive. I'm looking at the landscaping. Are you able to comment, like, what are those trees? Are they bushes? Or what are, like, will that sort of alleviate any of those concerns? Or would we have to wait 20 years for a tree to grow?
Thank you, Councillor Grice. I would have to look at I think it might be in the package that, yeah, I don't know what species.
Yeah, like I see trident maple, and it's not really.
Yeah, I mean, it would. My simple answer and quick answer would be that, yeah, it would take a bit of time, obviously, to provide some screening like any tree.
And then I guess my second question, just on the tails of what Councillor Mattis was saying, has that conversation happened at all with the developer about building 6 units as opposed to 7? And do you know, sort of, would they come back with 6, or would they be gone?
I'm not sure. Oh, I'm not sure, truthfully. I did mention their original proposal was for 8 units. And I did mention that I had some concerns with the livability of the units. They were tight bedrooms, and so they've reduced it down to 7. So anyways, it's tough. Council has a tough decision to make, because there's really a trade-off between parking and number of units. You see in communities, say like Penticton, where a lot of homes are being built. There's 1 parking space per unit, and people just find parking on the street or anywhere else. Like a lot like this, if there's 2 parking spaces per unit, you're probably not going to get more than a 4-plex. Does that matter? Like, I don't know. Like there's really just a trade-off that's going to have to really think about before you move forward and amending bylaws to require, say, 2 parking spaces per unit again.
Yeah, and I agree with what Councillor Ventimiglia said, that it's not really fair to change the rules halfway through. But I mean, the more and more we discuss this, the more sort of problems are bubbling up to the surface here. And I think that that perhaps going back to 6 units is the right way to go. That'll possibly make room for more amenities and maybe more parking as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the Director of Development Services. I might be mistaken here, but I thought you said when we started discussing this that the existing zoning, because of the lot coverage or something like that, the units would actually be smaller. Even if there was 6 units, they'd be smaller than what is proposed now, or did I hear that wrong?
Yeah, so just to answer that question, the current zoning allows 50 dwelling units per hectare, which is 6 units based on the size. And it allows a 0.45 floor area ratio, which equates to 6,000 square feet. So the units as proposed now are 1285 in size. If they built under the current zoning, it would be 6,000 square foot units. So the units they would have to build, that's what the zoning allows, is to you to build 6 1,000 square foot units under the current zoning, because you can't vary floor area or density or the number of units. So it would be a zoning amendment regardless. Even if they go down to 6 units, if they want to do 6 units that are 1,200 square feet in size, they would be asking for a zoning amendment again.
So sticking with the existing zoning would make just smaller units. Not only 1 less unit, but each unit would have to be smaller unless they applied for a zoning amendment in that zoning, under that zoning.
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Ventimiglia.
You beat me. I was just about to take down my hand. I was going to ask and talk about that exact same thing. So I think it's been answered, but just to reiterate then. So I was thinking, oh, no big deal. Yes, the units currently as it sits right now would have to be 1,000 square feet or so, but you just come back and ask for a variance to the size of the unit. But you're saying that that's not possible. They'd be back again looking for exactly what they're looking for now, but just for 6 units.
Yep.
Okay.
I think I would be much more in favor of 6 units the same size as opposed to 7 units this size. I think it would, I would be much more comfortable giving a variance for that. Because you're going to get the amenity space, you're going to have more room for some on-site parking, some additional visitor parking. You have more options to change that. I hadn't noticed that end wall facing Park Drive, and that is a main street, and that is kind of not what you want on a main drag, is to have the side of a building that close. So I think I'm landing where I'm going to land on this. Parking is a challenge. It always is going to be a challenge. I don't know that we need to add 2 spaces for every unit that we build in town here, but some places are more challenging than others. And Salamander Avenue is a challenging place. It basically is wide enough for becomes a one-way street when somebody parks on there at this time. And who knows what the future plans are for there. I guess when that area gets developed, Salamander Avenue will be finished at some point in time. But I think I'm going to not be in favor of this. I would like the message, personally, if I had my choice, the message would go back to the developer. We will accept 6 units of the same size on that piece of property, but we're not going to allow 7 units of that size. So that would be my comments where I'm landing on this discussion. Good discussion. Thank you. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. On that basis, I would make the motion that council refer back to staff for additional information. I think that'll give the developer and planning an opportunity to come back with something that's more amenable to council, and without voting this down and then having them to pay another fee to come back again. I'd rather refer it back and give them another opportunity under the same application. So I would put that motion on the floor.
I would second that motion, but I see the director's hand up, so I'm not sure if he needs to go first.
Director?
No, he can't.
Okay.
Is
I'll
that
second the motion.
Seconded, moved and
Yes.
seconded. Director, did you have some comments?
I just wanted to make sure that I'm clear on council's wishes for this project. So my thought is, if you reduce it to 6 units, there will be more amenity space added in the middle between the units. So like a bigger common area. I don't know if they're going to be bigger patios because the widths of the building probably won't change. So there will be enough amenity space because as I mentioned, that increase between the units. I can't imagine, because of the drive aisle and the access, there'll probably still be a variance for the same on the exterior side setback. And then also I can work with the developer and push the fronting appearance to Park Drive and see if we can get an actual door entryway of some kind from that side. Is that correct for the most part, what I'm insinuating?
I think you're on the right track, Director, but I would also, if you can, push as much as you can to change the shape of the unit so that we get the amenity space with the unit as opposed to common amenity space, and see if we can improve our setbacks. You know, if you're looking at square footage, it's just a matter of squishing and moving the box, so to speak. And I think they have the capability to do that, but I leave it to you to work with them.
Is that still your hand up?
Yeah, sorry, just
Okay.
to follow up just to Councillor Mattis. So you're sort of thinking you could do wider and less deep buildings essentially, right? Because then there would be more of a patio space. Yeah, I see.
Yeah,
I see what
I think so.
I know where you're going. I see what you're putting down.
That would be ideal. Councillor Grice.
Thank you, Your Worship, and hopefully with wider units that would allow for more parking as well, which is part of this discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Have a motion that's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to item 6, zoning amendment bylaw 1380.21, 6005 Station Street and 248 Co-op Avenue. This is for third reading. This is what our public hearing was about earlier today as well. Are there any questions for the Director of Development Services on this bylaw? Not seeing anyone. Can I get a mover of the motion that council read zoning amendment bylaw 1380.21 a third time, and that the zoning amendment bylaw 1380.21 be forwarded to the Ministry of Transportation for approval prior to adoption?
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Item 7, our last item, noxious weed control service establishment amendment bylaw number 2065.02 2021 and nuisance control service establishment amendment bylaw number 2198.02 2021. This is what we had a presentation on earlier today, and the motion is that the Town of Oliver Council consent on behalf of the electors of the Town of Oliver for the adoption of the Regional District of Okanagan Similkameen Noxious Weed Control Service Establishment Amendment Bylaw number 2065.02 2021 and Nuisance Control Service Establishment Amendment Bylaw number 2198.02 2021.
I would move the motion.
Okay, good. Thank you, Councillor Mattis.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? There's nobody here to ask questions of, so.
It's not that I have questions, but I would like to make the comment. I would like a better process for charging the people that get the benefit of the service a little more than the people that don't get the benefit. It's not big dollars, but the town pays for starling control in vineyards and orchards that have nothing to do with the town. I know there's no way around that at this point, but it would be nice if there were a method for that.
I guess I would just comment back, Councillor Mattis. I hear what you're saying, and I can understand that totally. But I guess, you know, like you mentioned before, the need to think regionally, and if the farms that are in our region are successful, then we will be more successful as well. So there is some argument that way. But I hear what
I would support that as soon as they start paying for our water and sewer.
I will call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to business, award of contract for replacement of fire duty truck D181 unit number 10. I will pass this over to our CFO.
Can't hear you, Alma.
I'm on mute.
There, you can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Maybe because I wasn't speaking into the mic. I had to move to my laptop. The purpose of this report is to provide council with a recommendation of award to execute a contract with the highest ranked proponent for the recent request for proposals for the supply of a fire duty truck. And this was brought forward to council during the budget meetings, and the existing truck had a catastrophic failure, and we added it to the budget. And so this truck was rated by the fire chief and a select group as the best possible purchase for the fire department. Thank you.
Any questions for our Chief Financial Officer?
No questions, but I'll move the proposed motion.
Second.
Moved and second. The only question I have is the price of $81,082 doesn't seem to match the price that's on the evaluation sheet. I was just wondering why the discrepancy.
In the motion, I put it net of taxes, and they probably had their the taxes in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to correspondence, I'll pass it over to our corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the January 10th correspondence report, there's 2 items for council's action. The first being correspondence from Silga dated December 12th. It's the call for resolutions for the 2022 convention. Receipt of resolutions is due to Silga by February 25th. What's occurred in prior years is to a committee of the whole meeting, I would bring in a report that outlined prior resolutions, and council would start sharing ideas for resolution with the chief administrative officer. We would formulate a report and then start drafting resolutions for that convention. So the resolution is that council directs staff to bring a report to a future meeting to consider resolutions for the 2020-22 Silga Spring Convention.
I'll move the proposed motion.
Thank you. Did I hear
I'll
a second?
second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I do.
Yes, Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. In correspondence from Silga, and I noticed that it wasn't in the report here, so just want to make sure it didn't get missed, was that there was also a call for nominations for the Silga board. So
through the chair, I think that came in after, and I think I might have it on the next report, the next meeting. So yeah, I have seen it. Yeah, I think it was delayed. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. As long as it doesn't get missed.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions? I will call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried.
Thank you. And the second piece of correspondence came in for information, but I did put it as a potential action item if you so choose. I think it was a email from Minister Fleming of Transportation and Infrastructure, and it's with regards to municipal speed limits. The email speaks to options that are available for municipalities if they wish to make changes to speed limits. Some municipalities have changed their default speed limit. City of Nelson, for example, is at 40. So it's open for your consideration. I see the Director of Operations is back on the screen. He may have a comment with regards to that, but I will take your comments.
Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't think that we need to change any speed limits. The issue isn't the speed limit, it's enforcement.
There's no other comments. Would you like to make the motion that council receive and file?
I'd be happy to make that motion.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item? I will call a question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried.
Sorry, Your Worship. And oh, there we go. And the last motion is that the January 10th, 2022, that's hard to say, weekly mail be received.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. I'll call the question. Is anyone opposed to the motion? Motion is carried. Moving to councillor reports. Councillor Mattis.
Thank you, Worship. I don't have much to report. I had a wonderful vacation in Jamaica. I'm glad you all looked after things while I was gone. If you're able to take a vacation, I would recommend it on 2 counts. One, for your own mental health in these times, and second, the economy of the other countries needs our help as well. Other than that, today's meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Mattis. Councillor Ventimiglia.
I've been dreaming about a vacation, but haven't made it anywhere yet. So the only thing that I have to report is from December 15th, which seems so long ago, South Okanagan Aquatic Center Committee meeting, and we'll be looking forward to a draft report coming soon in the next month or so.
Thank you, Councillor Ventimiglia. Councillor Schwarzenberger.
Thank you, Your Worship. A quiet Christmas holidays with family, and last Wednesday I attended the agenda review with yourself and senior staff, and today's meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Schwarzenberger. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just today's meetings, but I did want to give a huge shout out to Public Works for getting the town through Snowmageddon as best as they could. It's nice to see the sidewalks so clear, and I just think they're doing a great job. I've been driving around some other municipalities, and I think we're doing great. So kudos to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grace. For myself, December 16th and January 6th, RDOS meetings, and I will also jump on to Councillor Grace's shout out to our operations crew that done a really good job getting our town up and running and keeping our town up and running with all the snow that we've got. Upcoming meeting, the next regular meeting of council is January 24th. Acting mayor schedule for January and February is Councillor Schwarzenberger. And it's public question period. I don't see anybody left on the attendee list. Is that, am I seeing everything there? Corporate officer?
That's correct. There's no attendees.
Okay. Then I will look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Call the question. Is anyone opposed? We are adjourned. We'll see everybody. Hopefully we get together for in person at our next regular open meeting. I know Diane's working on some technical equipment that's going to help us do that, so that some people can come in if they want to be virtual and other people can attend. So we'll get more information on that in the coming week, I'm sure. So take care, everybody, and thank you.